Good morning. How's everyone doing? Good. Ah, have you arrived yet? Are you in the present moment? If not, a few deep breaths. Bring yourself forward to the present, because most of us are stuck in the past and viewing this moment from a past. So really one of the key elements to opening to the spiritual dimension within the heart is to become completely present. You know, there was that interesting element to the Hebrew scriptures whenever a prophet was called by God or had this extrasensory experience, God's voice would go to the heart of the prophet, and the prophet's response was Hineni in Hebrew, here I am, present. So in other words, when we are in the present moment, we are in the immediacy of God's presence. So most of us are not in that present moment. We're forgetful of the presence of God because we're fixating on a past. And that past is the forgetfulness. That past is a self that continually distracts us and takes us away from being present, being open, being receptive. And so we want to just bring attention, awareness to that as we move into today's service. That the present moment is the oasis. It's the paradise. It's this place of rest and peace and refreshing and rejuvenation. A place of healing, a place of purification, letting down our burdens, letting go of the problems and the challenges, and getting something that we didn't expect, a blessing, an upliftment, an awakening. But that can only be experienced if we bring ourselves forward into the present moment. And so we welcome all of you as well joining us on Facebook and hoping that you too are joining us in this immediate experience of the present moment. And the conversation, as always, is a conversation of unveiling. This is a term that the Sufis like to use. And the unveiling is bringing us out of these shades and veils and coverings that we keep habitually, unconsciously going back into, which blocks us from the love and the light and the peace and the joy of God's present moment, where our soul and God's presence join as one being. So all of our discussion, all of our ways of approach this morning are simply to constantly remind and guide and provoke us to come to a place where we want to let go of our past. We want to understand our past as a learning experience, but no longer think that we're chained to it, that we're slaves to our past, even 5 minutes ago, and the past that we've assigned for other people in our life. That's something to really understand. When we hold grudges and grievances, a lot of the times we're in these karmic bonds with other people, and we are reinforcing for one another our worst self. And we're in a habitual dynamic of constantly showing up as our worst self with certain people. And these things become concretized, solidified, the norm. And so what we want to recognize is to come to this oasis, to come to this place of true rebirth in the present moment, we have to be willing and brave enough to let go of what we've known as our past and come to the present moment. And this is one of the reasons why we always run away and hide from the present moment, is because we're afraid, because it's the unknown. We don't know what's going to happen. Better the devil you know. And yet, if we're really sensitive and applying our heart to the moment and sensing that this is an invitation to be refreshed, to actually find strength for your journey onward, that we're not going to see it as a threat. And that's my hope for us this morning. So we have some things to get into, as always. We're going to be looking at some of the New Testament teachings. We're going to be looking at the Sufi teachings of Rumi. We may even stop off in the teachings of G.R. Gurdjieff if we have some time and the spirit prompts. So hope you enjoy the ride. Buckle up. Keep your hands inside the car until the end of the ride. Oh, and I forgot to mention, we will also be looking at the Zen teachings of the Japanese Zen master, Basui. Okay? So a nice multi-ethnic, multicultural smorgasbord for you this morning. So let's start by just settling down, letting go of identifying with concepts, and just returning to the breath. Softening the heart, relaxing, and then relaxing some more. That God is the God of all comfort. And we're also taught to invoke or call upon the Spirit of God, the presence of the divine within the heart. That this is a willful effort, a willful choice to invite in the presence of love. We just ask that all of our hearts and minds be attuned to the frequency of divine wisdom and divine joy. That we truly educate this morning, that we bring out this deeper wisdom and deeper knowledge from within our own depths. That we are here to understand. We are here to remember the Spirit and to forget the ego. We ask to be guided into the silence of the heart, because we know it is only the quiet mind that can remember God. And we follow the instruction that whatever is arising within the heart that is causing any disquiet, that we simply know this is the next right step in surrendering all that we are into the present moment, to empty the self. As it says in the New Testament, kenosis leads to theosis. The emptying of the self leads to the divine illumination. It's paradoxical, and yet such is the case. Empty. Let go. We are grateful. We are grateful for the hidden hand. We're grateful for the Supreme Being who comes to meet the humble and the contrite directly within the heart. We are grateful. And so it is. We'll start with Rumi this morning. This is taken from the Pocket Rumi, published by Shambhala. The poem is The Runes of the Heart. I am a sculptor, a molder of form. In every moment I shape an idol. But then in front of you, I melt them down. I can rouse 100 forms and fill them with spirit. But when I look into your face, I want to throw them in the fire. Do you merely fill this drunkard's glass, or do you really oppose the sober? Is it you who brings to ruin every house I build? My soul spills into yours and is blended, because my soul has absorbed your fragrance. I cherish it. Every drop of blood I spill informs the earth. Quote, I merge with my beloved when I participate in love. Close quote. In this house of mud and water, my heart has fallen into ruins. Enter this house, my love, or let me leave. So Rumi is pointing out the dire distress of a soul that's yearning for God. That when we become more introspective and aware, we realize that everything that's occurring within this world is vanity. We looked at that a few weeks ago. The lament of the preacher in Ecclesiastes, vanity of vanities, all is vanity. All is empty, all is fleeting, all is dreamlike. Nothing really has the substance to fulfill where we need the fulfilling. And what Rumi is saying is when you have this level of introspection, you see the true nature of the world as a passing dream, then, like they also say in Zen, you're going to desire air. You're going to desire God the way a drowning man desires air. You're going to want God above all else. This is the way of return. It really is born out of a desperation. It's born out of an utter defeat. That when you're wise enough to realize that everything that you've been striving for in your life doesn't really measure up to what you really need and want, then you can sober up. See, in Sufism, they have this play on words of sober and intoxicated. When you're worldly minded, it's saying that you're drunk on the world in Sufism. You're drunk in the hopes of finding ego aggrandizement and ego fulfillment, the satisfaction of your desires. But when you sober up from the spell or hypnosis of the world, you become drunk in God. So you're one or the other. You're intoxicated with the world or you're intoxicated with God. And again, Rumi is saying that when you recognize that everything in the world isn't going to give you what you want, you sober up and then you turn your face around and begin to pursue God with your whole heart. Now, he says that he's a sculptor and molder of form. In every moment, he shapes an idol. So this is what we were alluding to this morning when we started service, when we were coming forward to the present moment. We have to put our idols down. We are imaginative beings. We conjure up. We're magical beings, conjuring up thoughts, images, emotions, memories, all types of forms. And we're dwelling upon them. We're viewing them as if they are really here and now. Even our own self-image, our sense of I, is a form, a self-concept. And what Rumi is saying is we're generating these images every moment. We're idol worshipers in this mystical sense. And it's veiling us from God. He says, but when I see your face, all of my idols melt. So when you turn your attention to the core of your heart and open to the presence of God, it does something to you that pulls you beyond the reach of the forms of your imagination, your images, your past, your projections of a future. You're brought into a state of present love. So remember, this is a language not to fill you with concepts. This is a language that in hopes of you really getting the essence behind the words, that you would undergo this transformation in the present moment. That this language would actually trigger something deep inside of you that we're going to be looking at in more detail in a little bit. This original nature, what the Sufis call the fitra, or what the Buddhists call the Tathagata Garbha, or what the Christians call the Logos. This original nature in you is already divinity itself. When you're done with your idol making, you can know yourself as you truly are. In the present moment, completely unveiled. And the way to this self-knowledge or gnosis is to let love back in. Divine love. Capital L, love. And that's what he says. In this house of mud and water, my heart has fallen into ruins. Enter this house, my love, or let me leave. I want nothing else beside you. When you get to that level of desperation, when you're ready to give up all of your idols and all of the attempts to satisfy your desires in the world, that is actually grace working in your life. When you have no hope left in the world, that's grace showing up for you. When you think you're on the verge of serious illness and death, marital breakdown, loss of a loved one, these are the chinks in the armor of the ego that can let the light in. This is why he says in A Course in Miracles, we consider our greatest successes, what we consider our greatest successes, God considers our greatest failures. And what we consider our greatest failures, God considers our greatest successes. Because God's business really is breaking your outer man, breaking it, submitting it to the law of love. So if we're really on this path, we're on a path first and foremost of submitting, of undergoing this breaking, this purification. Only after that comes illumination. But you can't have illumination without the breaking. Because what's breaking is that hard shell around the heart. With all of these ego desires, these ego thoughts, the anger, the grievances, the frustration, the fears, the loss, the lust. Until that breaks, you can't know yourself as God knows you in this fitra, in this Buddha nature, in this Christ nature, which is already shining. You don't have to do anything to it. It's perfect. It's perfect. It's a gift given to you from all eternity. But like Buddha tells us in the Lotus Sutra, it's like we have it hidden and we're eating out of garbage cans. not knowing we're the richest people in the universe. And until that breaking happens, we won't know we are who we are. We'll just see ourselves as mud and water. Now, in the New Testament, Jesus has this parable that we probably all have heard many, many times, and it's the sower of the seed. A sower goes out to sow. We've all heard this, yes? And some of the seed falls on the path, this wide path. Some seed falls on rocky ground. Some seed falls among the thorns and the thistles. And some seed falls on very fertile ground. And in Matthew's gospel, they give you a little more detail, and it tells you how, he's telling these stories to people, but they're seeing and not, their eyes are looking, but they don't see. Their ears are hearing, and they don't hear. And they're perceiving, but they don't understand. So we all hear these stories, but we never really grok what's being pointed at. And this seed is the light. It's the Logos. It's the Christ mind. It's what's lighting every human being that comes into the world. It's divinity within you. And where it's falling is the nature or attitude of your heart. We all have it. But some of us, when we hear about it, he says, like those that are on that broad path where the masses tread, immediately the ego or the diabolos, the wicked one, comes and gobbles it up. So as soon as we're given this pointing out that we are the divinity itself, the ego's right there to usurp the vocabulary and keep our minds identified with the idol of the body-mind. I am John. John's hearing this story. There's no room for the breaking of John because John doesn't think he needs to be broken. So seeing, John's blind. Hearing, John's deaf. John will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Other hearts, it says that it falls on the rocky ground, and immediately the seed springs up, and there's some, growth. But because it's on rocky soil, as soon as there are trials or difficulties or challenges that go against your old programming, the seed withers. And you find yourself completely back into the workaday world and the egocentric perspective. So you had a taste, but because you had no root in yourself, you didn't go into your own depth with it. It was more of a superficial thrill that happened, and now it's gone. You had a taste of the Spirit, but now it's gone. He says that's the rocky ground. The heart's rocky. The thorns and thistles is where we have the cares for wealth, the desire for personal pleasure as the preeminence within our life. That's what we want above all else. We want to be physically satisfied, intellectually satisfied. And so we don't really go into a place of giving all of that up, or at least seeing it for what it is, as this ephemeral, dreamlike substance, and really put our focus on God. He says the cares of the world will choke out that seed from your awareness. And then finally, the good ground. And hopefully we're tilling our hearts. Hopefully we're taking out the weeds, we're taking out the stones, so that the seed has a chance to sprout and to grow. Because he says, you're not supposed to hide this under a basket. This is supposed to be put on top of the hill. It's supposed to shine out. This is what's going to save the world. You already have what the world needs. But unless you're broken, unless you come to this moment humble and open and willing to undergo this transformation and to allow this deeper nature to sprout up in your awareness, it will all be pretend. So let these words settle like rain on the soil of your heart, the ground of your heart. Put aside your cares and your concerns for the next 40 minutes. Think with a new mind. Let your mind be renewed in this conversation. That's one of the subtle traps of the ego, is that we've heard these things 1,000 times. Most of us have been on this path for a good while. We know it. But there's a difference between knowing it and being it. Truly being it. Unless you want it above all else, knowing can be a real good second place trophy. We can develop our lingo and create such an actor that even we're fooled by it. John's a really good actor. John can give you the lingo. John can give you the posturing. John can give you the appearance of somebody who knows. But I know John is a fraud. John is a fool. John needs to be broken. And when he's nothing, when he's weak, then the grace can come through. Then the real light that the world needs can arise and shine. And then everything that John is will be used, directed from this deeper self. But John's not in control of it. John's control needs to be broken. You having fun so far? There's a lot to be heard in the silence. That's why I'm prompted, especially this morning, to pause and to let things settle in your listening. Because these, again, are triggers, these words, these ideas are meant to stir you up. And then there's a secret hidden working within your heart. If I keep talking and blathering on, you'll be thrown outside of yourself and you won't undergo that inner communion. So I urge you to allow these silent spaces to happen for you. You could take the hand of the Holy Spirit and truly go in beyond the surface, beyond the false personality. That you can open to the miraculous. So the Zen teachings of Master Basui, it just so happens that his collection of teachings is entitled Mud and Water. Just what we heard from Rumi a few moments ago. And there's a talk that he gave that is entitled Awakening Depends Only on Your Aspiration. Awakening depends only on your aspiration. So whatever we're aspiring to, we get. Whatever we want, we receive. So if our minds are preoccupied with idol worship and making of forms and fixating on forms and trying to control and manipulate other forms, then we're going to be getting what we want. But we won't be happy. We'll be driven by these desires to conquer and strive and acquire, but we'll never be happy. But if you want to wake up, that same desire that we once had for ego-aggrandizement, the same strength that we used to propel ourselves into our desires and our dreams of achievement, that needs to be redirected towards the divinity within the heart, this awakening experience. So the questioner has something interesting to say, and this is something that Lisa and I have talked about over the years. And basically the questioner is saying, what's the deal? Like, some people say that if you're overly intellectual and you're studying all of these scriptures, that it's just going to get in the way of you awakening to your inner nature. Others disagree with that and say you need the scriptures as a guide and a pointer for you to find that secret within the heart. And this is Basui's response. Enlightenment is one's inherent nature. This inherent nature is Buddha. Buddha is the way, and the way is wisdom. Everyone possesses this wisdom. It gives each individual perfect harmony. It is the natural beauty of the true ground and original face of all Buddhas and ordinary people. Awakening to this depends only on your aspiration. That's why in A Course in Miracles he says the first thing that we have to do is become motivated. Once we're motivated, once we see the value in having this be our life goal, then we will achieve it. So motivation is really a key element. Remember, if the seed is on soil that isn't motivated, isn't fertile, then the seed gets choked and it disappears from view. So motivation is really the key element. Aspiration is a key element because everyone, all ordinary beings, have this. What separates us from the Buddhas is our aspiration, our motivation. What do we want? So he says, it makes no difference whether you can read or not. Even if, for example, one cannot remember his own name, and being a man of low intelligence cannot read at all. If he believes this principle, that he has the Buddha nature, he is considered a brilliant man. What could be hidden from him? Even if, for example, one studies the teachings of all the great schools or performs wonderful miracles, compared with the original wisdom, it is like a solitary light under the sun. Or worse, like comparing a firefly to the light of the moon. So your original nature is brighter than all of the genius within the human world. Even displays of the miraculous pale in comparison to you finding the deeper riches of your original nature that are beyond form and beyond display. And it doesn't require acumen, pedigree, education. In fact, if you read the New Testament, St. Paul's saying a lot of the times in his letters, it wasn't those who were noble. It wasn't the highly educated. It wasn't the aristocracy that believed this message and are now in the grace of God, but the lowly, the simple. I always take comfort in that, because one of the things that I've pretended and really was beating myself up for, because I didn't have the pedigree. I didn't have the degrees that I wanted to have. I dropped out of my master's program. So what are you doing listening to me? So this always comforted me, that God is calling the lowly. God is calling the broken. God is calling the ones that think they're worthless. At death's door, totally broken, rejected, abandoned. He's calling you. And it's letting this love in. And don't hear this from John. It's letting this love in that will give you everything you want. Because everything that we're doing and thinking outside of this love is a cry for it. We're not at home in this world, and we're definitely not happy. And some of us show the symptoms of being outright miserable. And what makes us more miserable is we don't have hope that there's anything beyond this world that could ever be ours. And so this is our lot in life. And we've gone down the road of numbing and indulging and chasing after sex or whatever else we've tried to ease the sickness within the soul. And we failed. And we fail again. Thank God. I don't know if I'm speaking to anyone here this morning. Everybody here is all together and perfect. No problems, no concerns, no doubts, no struggles, no challenges. Let the quiet wash over you. Let that chattering mind stop just for a minute. Be renewed in your mind. If you're feeling any physical pain, that too can become an offering. Give it to God. Give everything you know and have and are to God right now. Whatever problems you're facing with other people in your life, check to see, am I trying to control them? Am I trying to get the love that I need from them? This love that can only come from God? And they fail me. They don't show up for me. They have abandoned me again and again. They disrespect me. Are you blaming yourself for not being there for somebody, betraying somebody, cheating on somebody, lying. Give it to God. Unburden your heart this morning. Especially those who think they know, who have the lingo. Humble yourself. And see that you're truly nothing without your source. It's good to be broken. It feels good when you're broken open, when you're utterly defeated and you give up the fight to try to be the idol. That's when salvation comes to your heart. That's when God's power can flow through you and you'll experience grace. And this is from Rumi. Your mysterious giving. O Lord, truly your grace is not from our work, but from your mysterious giving. See, there's a part of your heart, mind, that knows how to open to the transcendent, knows how to receive the Spirit. There's that dimension within yourself, your nature, your essence, knows how to turn its face back to God and receive this mysterious giving in the present moment. Be washed and renewed. Save us from what our own hands might do. Lift the veil, but do not tear it. Save us from the ego. Its knife has reached our bones. Who but you will break these chains? Let us turn from ourselves to you. Who are nearer to us than ourselves. Even this prayer is your gift to us. How else has a rose garden grown from these ashes? That's Rumi speaking about his own life. Burnt up, utterly annihilated, and then the rose garden. You see, the whole drive in this present world system is to make a name for yourself, to be somebody. And there's a whole empire that is designed to feed that illusion. The empire of Babylon, as Bob Marley would like to sing. Babylon wants to feed that be somebody in your heart and have you run away from Eden. And yet, the kingdom of God wants to utterly annihilate you, burn you up. So your choice is breaking or Babylon. Breaking the outer ego or feeding the outer ego. Do you want the garden or do you want the fire? And then finally here from Rumi, pain that saves. Pain that saves. Delusion is a divine curse that makes someone envious, conceited, malicious, so that he doesn't know the evil he does will strike him back. If he could see his nothingness and his deadly, festering wound, pain would arise from looking within, and that pain would save him. So Rumi's alluding to these three stages of the soul that's talked about in Sufism. There's the soul that they call the commanding self, this self that commands and demands its own lusts and satisfaction, and it tries to dominate. That's that outer ego. Then there's the soul that blames. That comes next. When you're done with the petulant little drive to get, then there's that other part of yourself that's full of blame. You're blaming everyone and you're blaming yourself. The self that blames. But see, that can be used like a surgeon's scalpel. If it's in the wrong hand, it just leads to increased bitterness. And the world's out to get you, and you're never going to get what you want, and you're a jerk because you missed the exit back there, and you should have done it differently. Blame, 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 blame. Or, under the right tutelage, that blame is what he's talking about in his poem, where you develop this inward searching to see that all of this is a festering wound within your heart. Your heart is hurt. Your heart is wounded. That's why there's the blame, the guilt, the projecting onto other people that's their fault. It all stems and is caused by a wounded heart. And nobody on earth can heal that wound. Only the mysterious giving. Only the mysterious giving. In fact, your character that you play, mine is John. John is a project, a construct that I've made to numb me from ever looking at that core wound again. Be somebody. Get lost in Babylon. Never look at that wound again. But it's only when we see that even the pain that we're experiencing in life is a form of salvation. If we could see our nothingness, if we could see the deadly, festering wound, if we can experience without numbing or running away, directly experience the pain that would arise when we really do confront our woundedness, our narcissism, our sense of abandonment. If we can just face it, then that pain could save us. Then the wound would become golden. That's about all I got. So the blue bag's going to go around. I'd love to hear any feedback from you. If this was on point, if it spoke to your heart, I'd love to hear some of your thoughts. If you are joining us on Facebook, we greatly appreciate your offerings as well. So if you go to unityofstewart.org, you can find the donate page there. And just remember to select the 8 a.m. service, and we'll know that you're supporting us in this practice. So thank you for that, and thank you all. So what's up? What are your thoughts? Mhm. What do you throw out? What do you throw out? Oh, you throw the ego out. Okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So back to what you were saying about what you hear on Sunday morning being challenging, that there can be gratitude. And I'm curious, I want to bless the offering, but I want to get back to asking you a question once we're done with that. We're very grateful for everyone's contribution and support. May it be used as good seed to bring about true healing and true restoration. So it is. Amen. So Chuck, what do you find challenging about the Sunday morning service? Being in the present moment all the time, you're saying? Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Very good. And, yeah. Well, it's a cultivation practice, right? It's just like having a garden that you have to weed it, you have to trim and get rid of the pests that may show up in the garden. Our minds are very similar, and therefore we have the need to see things with, pointing out bright light. And this is what I seek to bring on a Sunday morning, are ways of looking at the nature of the heart and the mind and the world that may challenge, may stretch, may irritate, and cause us to rethink some of our habitual ways of being. And that may be uncomfortable. But my intention is always to bring more light. And so this is what we're all doing here. We're increasingly opening to more light. Okay, good. Thank you, Chuck. Because, one of the things that, I just want to point out is if we do find challenge to what's going on a Sunday morning here, it just really could be that experience of expansion that may be taking place in the heart or the resistance to it. And I'm not saying that was your intention by saying that. Thank you. Anyone else want to share? Any? Mm-hmm. Yep. Sometimes it feels like the floor is dropping out underneath us, and we're in a free fall. We don't know which direction life's taking us in. People are, leaving or not leaving, whatever the case may be. And we really have the need to deepen our trust in these moments, going through those valleys of shadow. really trust. Because, we bring it up from time to time. We might be feeling this personally in our own individual life, but collectively too, there is this very trying, difficult environment that we're in. Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. They usually resolve themselves, don't they? Yeah. Yeah. And then if we're called upon to respond, it's like in that moment. This is, that right action in the moment doesn't come from a planning or an agenda. It's that spontaneous inner nature, that spiritual essence in us that knows the right thing to do at the right moment. And we can learn to really depend on that. None of what? Well, we are, and I see your point, Chuck. I really do, that the present moment is the moment of peace. And yet we're on a journey of learning. This world is really geared towards, educating our soul. And so there will be these challenges along the way and these opportunities to deepen our connection, because when we're truly in the present moment, all the veils of time and space will dissolve, and we'll know ourselves as one self with the eternal that is everywhere and everyone. So we are incrementally coming to this place of total union. And so this world is helping us increase the level of engagement to the present moment that you're relishing in. And it will only get deeper and better, but sometimes there are those moments that the education of the soul can override our connection. And we can become lost or temporarily dispirited, or whatever the case may be. And so this is to build that inner muscle and that inner conviction. So it may occur. Sometimes we go through life in a very sunny valley. And other times, it's pretty rocky and rough. But it's all designed to educate. To be in the sunny valley, you're saying? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's good if you're in that practice of dissolving as soon as things arise and you're back in the place of divine union. Excellent. Excellent. We had Jerry, and then we'll go with Ray. Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things that, we mentioned earlier, that there's that first level of the self, which is all geared towards selfishness and outward going and projecting. That next level is like where you sort and sift out the right and the wrong. And then there's the clarification where you begin to thin the veil, and your self becomes more transparent to the spiritual radiance that is behind it. And you begin to feel guidance. But that can be a little bit of a struggle to get to that level of transparency, like we were just saying. But once you're in that level of transparency, you're being given guidance. And that guidance can come in a multitude of ways. That's why being like a child is one of the greatest illustrations of how to walk in the Spirit, because it will use everything that you have and are to teach you and guide you. So it may use intellectual stuff, it may use emotional stuff, it may use bumper stickers and billboards, but it's where, because you're so open and you're not saying, well, it's not this and it's not that, because you're so open, it can come to you in any way, shape, or form. And so your guidance will be what God wills and how he wills it. And then you, as the little child, are open to receiving it in whatever way it's best for you at that moment. So if you need to look at something and understand it and undo the knot and thereby release decades of pain, that may be. It may be. Right.
I'm just frequently reminded that if the path were smooth and the mountain were smooth, you couldn't climb it.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes the problems and adversities are there as a stepping stone for enlightenment or for growth.
Yeah, well, they're there because we resisted who we are. We ran away from it, and we made some really bonehead choices. And, we made a rocky road for ourselves. But, at the end of the age, it says that every mountain will be humbled and every valley will be exalted. It's like the change of the eon that Isaiah prophesies, that when we come to our divine sense of awareness, there are no rocky roads or hills. But it's getting back to that, undoing what we've done to ourselves that can be very rocky and challenging. So, last one.
John, forgive me because you're amazing in my time. I haven't been focusing my time properly, obviously, but it's been a long time since I've been in your presence, and you're amazing. And it's hard for me to accept that there is no good in me except for he that is in me, and to really to take those idols out of the way, because I'm driving down the street and because I have a directive of where I need to go. Anybody that gets in my way is wrong because I need to go there.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, I can justify it, I can rationalize it,
Sure.
because this is my life.
Sure.
And it will, I lose sight of all the miracles and everything around me because I'm so directed.
Yeah. And how does that feel?
As far as
Being in that mode of operating that you're in, where you just described it, how does that feel? And I don't mean to be Dr. Phil here. I just,
ends up being unsatisfactory because it can't be fulfilled because I'm not getting the end result without having to navigate. Now look at the will of God. And all the characters went through turmoil and just outright mayhem.
yeah.
They were in the will of God. We think, oh, well, if it's not pleasant and I'm not happy, well, then I'm not in the will of God.
Right,
That's not
right. So this is what I would say to all of this. God shares himself with us. Like, we are one self with God. Like, that's the beauty of it. That's why we're seeing him the way Rumi sees him, as the beloved. He's in love because of the gift. So you're not nothing in truth. As a separate self trying to be somebody you're not, that's nothing. But in God, you're everything. Now, he wants to meet us where we are, right here, right now. And we just have to keep opening to it by letting go of what's in the way. So if you're pissed off and you're always me, then that's what you have to give up. Thou, 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 thou. And you'll be getting the cues on how to show up less selfishly, more of contribution and a love, and then tenderizing your heart so that you can come more and more into this place of inner guidance, where you'll realize as soon as the thoughts come in, that's a thought that hurts. That's a thought that leads to my destruction. That's a thought that is going to hurt somebody else. I won't speak those words anymore. I won't speak death anymore. So this is a developing process, but you have to make the choice and then abide by it and allow that seed to grow and not choke it out. So that's all the time we got. So hope that in some way helps. So let's rise. And you can join us in the closing prayer if you're on Facebook. And we just want to center within the heart and recognize our divine inheritance, that we are the vessels that have been given the Christ seed, the Buddha nature, the fitra. And so we just recognize this divine treasure as the self deep within the heart. And this self knows the light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. And the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is. Amen. Have a beautiful Sunday, everybody. Thank you so much.